Luciana, you're the expert on investing in fashion.
I'm not an expert, but I'm very passionate about it, and I enjoy it very much. So it's a pleasure being here and discussing this topic. I think that social media has impacted so many sectors, and fashion is really on top of that list. And also, this particular panel will be quite interesting because it brings two different points of view to the table. So I'd like to invite Hilary Peterson from List, the social shopping personalized platform, and Valentin von Arnim from German luxury brand Hilary von Arnim. Thank you for being here. I'll sit here. Hi.
Hello.
Hello. So just to set the stage for everyone, it would be wonderful if you could give us a bit of background on your companies and on your current social media strategy.
Sure. Yeah, so List is a personalized fashion marketplace, and our mission in life is to make it easier to shop online. We basically looked at how people shop online, and right now it's like a one-to-one mapping of what happens in the offline world. So like every brick and mortar has a .com, and we thought technology allows you to do so much more, so how can we improve it? So the first thing we did was bring together all the points of purchase for brands and retailers selling luxury fashion online. So we're aggregating it. Then we let users personalize it by following the favorite designers, retailers, magazines, whoever it might be, to give them a personalized shopping feed. And then the last thing that we most recently launched in the US was about 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago now, integrated checkout. So we now let users shop in a single step from multiple retailers.
How many followers do you have on social platforms?
Yeah, we have over 1.5 million followers across our social channels. And being a social commerce platform, obviously social is really important to what we do. And then in terms of our strategy, from the beginning, it's been important getting our message out, our brand out. And then we've also looked to innovate there. So we launched a program with Pinterest where we overlaid commerce on Pinterest with Pinterest Connect. And then we also were the first people to do live backstage hangouts at Google Plus Hangouts at Fashion Week, where we allowed users, just general customers, to come on and get a backstage view of the designers, hair, makeup artists, and stream to over 2 million people worldwide.
Great.
Our mission is not different, but we make women feel well and hopefully pretty. We're at the very opposite end of the spectrum. When my mother founded this company 35 years ago, and we're really a product company and come from and think about the product. And when I joined the company 7 years ago, we had no one in marketing. And even today, we have 5 times more people concerned about the product versus marketing and public relations. So we really look at this as a very new channel and as something that allows us to reach out to the world. But I'm actually sitting here more to learn how to do it and find out and share my fears because our brand identity is what we cherish the most. It's something that we've built for 35 years. And we have to really look at what's going to happen out there and how do people write about it, what pictures do they forward on, how do they perceive the brand. And so we're really much careful to look at what's the right way. But of course, on the other side, the opportunity is fantastic.
Thank you. So if we just take a step back, what do you think is the biggest change that social media brought to the fashion world, the most radical impact?
Yeah, I think it's that the consumer's now in control. The burden's really on the brand to make sure that they're considered in users' interest graphs. So, they're part of their Twitter feed, Facebook, et cetera. If you're not where your customer is, it's hard for you to get your messaging across. It's no longer a dialogue where you could buy a print ad and that was your messaging and it was presented to you. It's no longer a monologue, it's now a dialogue. So you really have to engage on a one-to-one level with each of your customers and communicate with them. But I think that's the most important change.
It's quite incredible. I was having dinner with a friend of mine on Friday night, and he runs one of the big department store chains in Germany. And they just went online with their web shop. And they had this interesting case where somebody bought on account, received the product, and before he had paid, he ordered another product on account, and then went on vacation and forgot to pay. He had intended to pay, but didn't pay. And within 2 weeks, they sent the debt collectors to his door. Of course, he was absolutely furious, but he felt sorry with the debt collectors because it's on your record. And he immediately went on Facebook and said, "Don't ever buy from this company." that was elevated to CEO level within, I think, 7 minutes. And the entire company was up in arms. So the power the consumer has in the speed of time is absolutely incredible.
I think those are both very interesting points, and they both lead to the consumer becoming a brand ambassador. Before, it was mainly supermodels or celebrities, but today it's me and you who are promoting brand content and purchases to our friends, which is really unprecedented. Do you think that in order to stay relevant going forward, brands will have to focus on this even more than today?
100% I do. I mean, I think that influence comes from so many places now. Again, it's not the models, it's not just the magazines. With a site like ours, we see just regular users who may have no personality elsewhere that you know of, become influencers on our site and selling thousands of dollars of products. On Pinterest, there's now marketing agencies that actually, look at influencers on Pinterest and represent them to brands to get them to, pin their products and sign up. So, 100%. Influence can come from anywhere, and you have to be really, really open to that, I think, as a brand. And also give them the tools to be able to share and promote on your behalf.
Of course we have to, and we want to. For many different reasons. Number one is we actually just launched our web shop, and the first order came from a small village in Finland. It was quite exciting. It's a place we don't sell to, but the very first order. And of course, we will use these tools to reach those clients. But the other tool, of course, is to find out, to me, Facebook is not really a platform, but rather a space. And in this space, and I imagine, you sit in your bed, in your pajamas, with your laptop on your laps, and you look at the pictures of your friends, of their vacation, and you're a very different mindset or mood. And to reach you at that point in time, you can't bombard somebody with, just pictures and information. You have to reach them what they really think about and what they care for in that moment. And certainly if you can do that and touch them, then you create this emotional world that really creates a fan and an ambassador that you talk about.
I think that touches on something interesting, specifically with Facebook, right? I think it's probably one of the only social channels that is actually focused on your social graph as opposed to your interest graph. So on Facebook, you really are including your friends and all that. So it does feel, if a brand is trying to market to you there, and why F-commerce never worked, because, someone's coming into your bedroom and here, buy this. It's just not welcome. Platforms like Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, you're all of a sudden following people that may be your friends, but largely they're not. Even Spotify, you rarely look at the social recommendations. You're more discovering based on similar tastes and things like that. So I think that's a huge difference and a really important one. And so when brands approach any social channel, having a clear strategy as what your goal to get out of it is. Is it awareness? Is it traffic? Is it sales? Is really, really important.
And I think what's really incredible is the information that you received through bloggers or Facebook is not as paintbrushed. It's a much more raw and real information. I think for companies like ours who have history and stories to tell, that we can really tell a true story, and a true story that is not being, paintbrushed on a 10-page beautiful catalog, but how it is. And it's quite, the young bloggers, because given our price point, originally, our clientele is a little bit more mature than the young fashion icons. And when we, to reach the bloggers for us took us a while, but once they come and once they see the house, they see the showroom, they touch the product, they meet the team, they become very quickly fans and start talking about it. But you need to have that touch point to reach them. And then they can tell the real story of what's behind it. And I think that's quite important, that you have a real story and not something that you just invented for marketing purposes.
So I think this is a very interesting point, and you see more and more brands focusing on content. J.Crew, I think, does a nice job of telling the story behind the product. And given your wonderful heritage, is that something you plan on focusing more and more going forward, are already doing?
Yeah, of course. The heritage is what we have. We have a huge archive of ideas and product that we take from this, late 70s and early 80s and use them to tell the story. I mean, Burberry is showing us how to do it, and they do it quite well. So it's a huge tool, absolutely.
I think also, what's really important and what you're kind of touching on is, we're not selling things that people need. So it really is emotional shopping. It's not like you're going to Amazon and buying your toothpaste, your toilet paper, you know, the stuff that you need in one big shopping cart, and you don't think about it and it doesn't really matter. And brands at that point, I mean, for toothpaste, it's more of a commodity-based business as opposed to like a brand. It doesn't really matter. So it's really important for consumers to have an emotional attachment to you, and that comes through your heritage, your history, and your storytelling. And, you know, empowering consumers to continue sharing that message is important. It's like the equivalent of being at a cocktail party. And if you're going to talk to somebody at a cocktail party and tell them what you do and what your brand's about, I mean, that's going to inspire them to turn to the next person they speak to and say, hey, I just met this fascinating guy, and this is what he does, and just tell me more, as opposed to, you know, if you're very direct about your sales, like, oh, you should buy this, it's the best cashmere in the world.
Thank you. And Hilary, I was curious, how do you work with bloggers? Because they're also new fashion influencers as a result of social media, and you already touched upon this, so I'd love to hear your view as well.
Sure, yeah. I mean, again, so we think that anywhere that you can get fashion influence from and products online, recommendations, it's important to have in your list environment. So we work with over 4,000 or 5,000 fashion bloggers, you know, down from the Man Repeller to, you know, somebody maybe in Iowa, as well as top publishers, so like W Magazine, Lucky, Vogue, things like that, where users can automatically follow those entities on list, and we will have understood anytime there's a recommendation on their site and automatically add that product to their shopping list. So we give them an opportunity to generate revenue as well as, you know, expand their interest or their influence.
Okay, so we've talked about the nice parts of social media. It would be also interesting to touch upon the risks that come with it. I guess it's really unprecedented that today you're able to reach millions of consumers real time. You don't have to wait for the next edition of Vogue to see what the newest and latest collections are. So that's very powerful, but it also comes with risks, right? I'd love to hear your views on that, and I think you already touched upon this a little bit.
I want to know what your biggest fear is, actually, in terms of what do you fear the most about getting into it?
Well, you're quite exposed when people start taking pictures in your showroom and they post it and tell the story. Even myself, I'm actually quite worried about using Facebook, and for some reason I ended up having, I think, over 1,000 friends on Facebook. So I've only done 2 posts in my life. And one was obviously the web shop, because you have to share.
Scarcity breeds intensity.
It scared the hell out of me, 1,000 people. But of course it works. And of course immediately you got incredible, you know, reviews and backgrounds. And of course ask people, tell me what's wrong and what's not working. And people share the information very, very soon. So I think you have to touch it, be open to it. But of course it can spiral out of control if, you know, they're wrong, false information. Like my friend with you know, the big web shop, and somebody posts and they have, you know, hundreds of thousands of people that don't buy. So you need to be very, very quick, and you need to have a lot of manpower and people. So why are we not on Facebook yet is because we don't have the manpower. I think you need to have people to monitor and control it all the time. And you need to generate good and relevant content. You can't just, you know, take any picture, but it has to be a clear, true story to who you are.
And I'd be curious to hear your view on something else as a luxury brand. Do you worry at all about brand dilution? You know, all of a sudden you're communicating to the mass market, but obviously you want to keep this aura of a select and exclusive product. So that's probably a fine line to walk. How are you thinking about that?
I think some of the fashion brands today are actually becoming more consumer brands, and I think it's a very short step to becoming an FMCG, because where it's only about information, only about a story, and no longer about the product. So I think for us, we very much always put the product in front of it. So we start with the product and then tell the story, and not start with a story or the market need and then design into that, because that's what a consumer brand does. And I think for a design and luxury brand, you start with the idea and you dream about it, and not with the story that somebody tells you is what the market needs.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I guess to also follow on a more optimistic note in terms of keys to success in social media, I think, you know, everyone thinks of brands like Burberry as a poster child for success with social media. I think they have something like 15 million Facebook likes, which is unbelievable. Victoria's Secret, something like 23 million Facebook likes.
If I had half-naked women on my Facebook page, I might have that too.
So what do you think are the keys to success? What are the tools that you need to use and the strategies that you need to use to do well?
I think there's bigger risk in not adopting early or not trying things than less. And I would say with in terms of manpower, you don't necessarily need an army to do it. I mean, the biggest risk is that you come off as less than effective, but not damaging your brand, you know? I mean, Mary, for example, who spoke earlier, does a lot of her own social. I know you do your own Instagram, and it's not an army taking that. So you can really do it in a way that is really authentic and really engages the customers. So I think, first of all and foremost, adopting early, trying things, but of course not wasting your resources. So that leads into the second one, where I think you have to be strategic, have a specific objective with every channel you're on, and start to measure against it. And I think that what you're going to see, I mean, massive brands like Gatorade and Dell have these huge command centers where they've got, you know, an army of people monitoring all this data and in real time responding to certain things. And they can afford to do that, but I think in 2013 you're going to see a lot of those tools be available to small and medium enterprises, so you can start to leverage some of that data and respond in a way that is not necessarily as costly as what those others can invest in.
So I think you're touching on authenticity of the real story that you're telling and what's happening. I think that's really the great opportunity that we get to tell the story behind the scenes, to create that emotional bond. And especially with a product like cashmere, is you need to feel it on your skin, you need to love it. And I think that is something we need to use that space for, to create that emotional bond to your piece of clothing.
So now that everyone is either online or going online, or either on Facebook or going on Facebook, how do you stay relevant? How do you stay ahead of the curve? Or do you even want to?
I mean, I think that in terms of a brand generally staying relevant, it's continuing to evolve your story and continuing to kind of like spread that message and keep it up to date. I think that the most engaging content comes at the intersection of what's really happening, it sounds horrible maybe, but in the lines of pop culture and what's culturally relevant, as well as, you know, crossing what your brand means. So being able to do things that are, you know, if you know your customer is a certain woman who not only likes fashion, but is probably more outdoorsy or things like that, like, are you sharing certain news articles and commentary on things that are relevant to that audience? I mean, Nike does a fantastic job on that. You know, they sponsor all these different runs, and then they support these different causes that are related, or share people winning in different, you know, countries and different races and things like that. So I think that it's looking a little bit broader than just your brand, and figuring out where you can intersect what's kind of culturally happening and relevant at the moment, as well as your brand.
In terms of technology, I have no idea. I leave that up to you. But in terms of luxury brands, I think it's about consistency in your message and in your services. Is that what you see online, the product you buy, our store, people work in our stores, our team, when you call the web shop, that they give the exact same message and the same story, and that people, that Iris and I live exactly how we as a brand want to be perceived, that we, you know, that the message is true, and that it's us and not, I mean, especially her, we do women's fashion, I'm a guy, but that it's true. And I think if you can keep that and keep your identity, I think that's how you stay ahead.
So today, in a world of social media, I'm curious to hear your views in a yes or no answer. Is a great product good enough?
I think it's important. I think it's tremendously important, and,
yes or no?
It's going to be the backbone of, you know, whatever the result is. But I think, again, it's emotional shopping. People need to feel something from you with luxury fashion, and the storytelling in the brand is really important. People are buying into more than that.
So no.
It's not enough alone.
Okay.
It was the past 10 years. It won't be the next 10 years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This was great. And I don't know if there are any questions from the public or... Okay. Thank you.